So, good evening, everybody. I would like to start introducing our guests, three authors of this exhibition that came. Tijs Gilde, Tim Teven, and Paul Coenen. Yes, so we're gonna do like improvised guided tour and some discussion, and whenever you have a question or some comment, please join us. So I thought that for the beginning it would be nice that you would say a couple of words about the exhibition itself, how it came to life, and maybe you could introduce yourself as a group.
Yeah. So maybe it's good to say a little bit about why we are together. So there's one guy's not here.
Yes.
He's on a holiday. Already planned it a long time ago. But we own a little, well, we don't own, we rent a little space together. And so it was Onno and I, this guy, we're on the terrain already, in this area where lots of designers are. And then there was a new spot opening, somebody left. It was really big showroom, really big workshop. And we felt like we need to get this one. But it was actually too expensive, so we felt like we should team up with other people to be able to rent this space. And well, then we approached Tim and Paul.
We were already together in another studio, so yeah, so that's
And I think it's one thing to say about that, it's important to us that you find the right people to surround yourself with. To have the sort of same determination in where you want to go. I guess that's also what sort of also connects us also in the first place. Our drive and our mission in sort of same direction within this field. So yeah, we don't, our companies are separate, but we just share a workshop, and we share an exhibition space, and we share thoughts about the work. You know, you design something, you think like this is good or this is not so good. You just walk over and you think like, what's this? And then you get the answer, you know. All kind of fields, you know, in sort of like business kind of like how to do stuff with contracts. We also discussed those kind of things. So yeah, and then she visited me, I think 3 or 4 years ago, but I'm not sure already. And yeah, then we were talking about if we could collaborate. Years passed by, and then recently, I think Laura was our first studio during the Best Design Week, and then we presented also our work with the 4 of us, and well, maybe needless to say, it kind of works quite well together, all the pieces. So I guess that was the logical step to say, okay, let's do a group exhibition with guys who are already as a group in the same workshop. So yeah, I guess that's how it went.
So it's not the material that brought you together.
actually no. But it is like, that's also an important detail. I think that we do have a very similar way of initiating the design process, I think. And therefore you can also see sort of overlapping qualities in each of the works. And that's also why we kind of fit together well to share that space also.
Sorry?
You have to start.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how we came here also.
Furthermore, what you do in the process, I think it's also maybe school, you know, we all went to the same school, and Paul, Tim, and I, we all, before this design academy in Eindhoven, we all went to another school. So I guess sort of we all walked the same path. And well, maybe we can dive into this later, but the work is always from a team. Most things start with a technique or material and exploring it. So we're not necessarily in the beginning saying I'm going to design a chair, but you're just experimenting with material or technique or in industry, and then you try to challenge sort of like what are the boundaries within this technique, and then you find out, oh, we can make a chair this way. You know? It's not, or at least is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on the material that you choose to work on? Why? Is it, why in the context of today or, you know?
Well, for me, it started with like an exploration into tension and how I can connect different elements of metal together in like an unconventional way. And this was 3 years ago when I did my first furniture collection. And then metal was just the solution for the thing I wanted to create. So that's why I used metal then. And then now 3 years later, I still work mainly with metal and sheet metal. And for me, it's when you work so much with one material, you kind of become like an expert in this material, and all your new ideas come from previous projects you do. So then you keep exploring this one material and you go on with this. So that's how it is for
Yeah,
me.
for me, I mean, I came also from a blacksmith family, so I grew up surrounded by metal and having also access to tools that I experiment with. So I think that's a big part of that as well. But it's also it's the same as Paul, like the experimentation. And in my case, I did more research about the deformation of metal. And then that's exactly what you say when you work with it. That's also a bit the way of working. You do an experiment or you're making something, and then by doing a sort of action with that material, you start seeing a detail somewhere which pops up. And then you think like, okay, this detail I like, I can maybe implement that in an object, or what Tijs said, maybe that can be a chair or a functional thing. But this always appears while you're touching the material, while you're doing something with the material. So yeah, that's sort of how that ball keeps on rolling, then it stays a bit in metal.
For me, it's also like the design method that I developed over the years, which works very well for me, is that so I mainly work with sheets. And what I just do in my own studio, I make a lot of scale models. So I work from like just a sheet of paper, and I start cutting, folding to make shapes that I like, or see how things would work. Because if you can make it in paper, then it's a big chance you can also do it in steel. But this method is such a thing which I do it on a weekly basis, and it's also virtual that I stay for now in this material.
That was my next question. How do you work? Do you make models? Do you sketch? Do you renders? How do you design?
For me, it's about experimentation. So
you go
basically doing stupid things with materials, and then hopefully find a surprising thing that happens, which is most of the times unexpected. And then from that moment on, from the workshop to the office, try to translate this into an idea, go back to the workshop, do some more tests, and then go back and forth, and then sort of develop that method a bit. I hardly ever sketch anything, so it's always with a material or scale models or something like this. Sometimes also 3D modeling. If you make a bit more complex piece, just to figure out how the piece should be assembled, for example. But the main details and everything, they kind of evolve from the methods I use. So yeah, they're not sketched.
For me, also, well, sketching on paper, I do sometimes, just a quick look. Maybe that's often more of a reminder to myself, because, you know, I'm down in the workshop and I have an idea and I think, okay, I need to write this, make this into something visible, and then I just put it on the pinboard. But what I notice is that most of the times when you sketch something, then later I go into Rhino and do 3D modeling, because they're the how do you say, the scale, the verhouding,
Yeah.
you say proportions, yeah, they make or break it. So, and with the sketching, I cannot really know the proportions, so it's going to take me 20 sketches to find out the proportions. And then when I draw it in 3D, I find out that that's not exactly right. There you can just, you know, for instance, those trays, the height between those, you can just like move it up, move it down, and just observe it. If you see my 3D model files, in Rhino you can do that. There's like one object and I copy it and I go further on it, one object, and then there's the whole row of objects in the 3D program. So there's, for instance, for this one there must be 50 versions with all the centimeter here, centimeter there. So it's, yeah, that's one thing. By the way, for me, I'm not necessarily bound to use metals because I also do graphite materials. So those are all really coming from experimentation. So so I'm not a metal-based designer. I'm just an idea or form. You know, it's all based on form language, I guess.
But did you hear about the material itself? What kind of meaning it has? Cultural meaning, or where it comes from? Would you like to get like the best quality materials for your objects, or let's say something recycled, let's say? Or...
For me, I personally, I would always, let's go, but the first one is if it has meaning.
If the material itself matters.
I'm not so yeah, the material itself matters because it has sort of an expression, but for me there's no philosophical real thing about behind the kind of material. It's not a philosophy, although well, let's not get in there. So, yeah, because then you get philosophical. Sorry, what was the other part? What about if it has to be new or
Choices and the I don't know, sourcing.
well, you have properties which you want. So especially within metal, there's all kinds of properties, and each one has its own function. So metal or steel will rust, and aluminum will not, and stainless steel will also not. But in terms of the quality of the material, I would always go for something that's, especially in this collectible situation, for something that's high-end. And for me, recycling is, I mean, I could, if the material is beautiful and it serves the purpose, but in terms of preserving the world, I don't think those, how many do we make of these, you know? So I don't think it really matters, and in terms of sort of how it is and how it is perceived, it's better if it's then from something of high quality, right? So I don't think it really matters if we would start only using recycled materials. That's my opinion.
Oh yeah, no, so, it's not in the concept of the piece, I'd say. So it's not really of value for the end result if it's a reclaimed material. I mean, steel is recycled.
But you could source this also.
I do sometimes. Sometimes like take tubes from the scrapyard if that's quicker or something like that. Actually, in the beginning, I used to only do that because
That's also
during
cheaper.
COVID, the tubes that I used they got like almost 10 times more expensive. So I think they went from 65 for 9 meters to 700 euros.
Wow.
Then it's almost impossible to make a vase like this from this material. But that's short term because then the prices start stabilizing again. So then there was a short period that I indeed went to reclaim to the scrapyard to get the same materials. But that was actually just an economic reason. Yeah.
What about you?
For me, the thing regarding material is I like to maybe use one material in a piece, and that's like an exception with those chairs. You can disassemble them, but more, it's not really like the main reason or something, but more that I do feel that if it ever runs out of its lifespan, it's just like one thing you can recycle. But it's not really like its main goal, it's just something in the back, like if I can do this, I try to do this. And, like for example, the chairs, you can just screw the top and then you have these two elements and you can get rid of it. So that's something I hope that it outlives.
It's just the goal. And it's also the material properties are very important, I think, for all of us. Like to use them in the design, with this method of folding, the method of deforming. Plus, I also am very interested in surface finishes that you can do with metal. There's a lot of different options of how to treat the surface of the material, achieving different colors. So there's a lot of opportunities that this material brings. So that's one of the reasons also to choose that material, because it gives you this scala of opportunities.
do you call yourself usually? Do you feel okay when someone calls you an artist? Or artist?
I'm fine with it, but I wouldn't call myself, I would call myself designer, I think. Yeah.
But I don't know, I think it's very difficult to put that into boxes in general. What is really what? But indeed, I would say I'm also a designer. I think it depends with what you do also. But I also sometimes design interiors, and that's really something I don't see the connection with art so much.
No, I think that can say something about that. It's the artist. So we kind of have maybe they are more from a philosophy starting point. Might be, I don't know. But it feels that we have a sort of practical layer on top of it. There's a layer of practicality and industriality, things
It's
like
always
that.
functional, right? So that's
Yeah.
for me, it's like I do is like a functional piece, and it could be very crazy or not, but like it's functional. So for me, I feel like I'm a designer.
Yeah.
Rather than an artist, but
It always dictates, if you say like a coffee table, a coffee table is 45 centimeters high. Fact.
yes.
Right? Or maybe 50, but that's the fact. So that's how high it's going to be, for sure. So yeah, I mean, it's very about the point.
But it's not about the object, it's about if you were perceiving yourself
Yeah,
as an
that's
artist.
true.
Because I can actually, if you, for example, take the shelves out of your piece,
No, it's
it's sculpture. So then people probably would call this piece an art piece. But you still don't consider yourself an artist.
Maybe, yeah.
So I think it's very different what the pieces are and what you.
Yeah, maybe it shifts also.
Yeah, that's also why I don't want to put it into boxes. I think it's also it's a sort of fun thing to think about, but it's not. For me, I don't think it's a very important discussion also to have. But I can, maybe an artist thinks differently and he really doesn't want to be called a designer.
Yeah, I
I
can.
imagine that's more than the other way around.
Yeah.
Today I was reading the descriptions of your works, and in a way I really enjoy that it's so technical, usually. Right? It's just write what it is, or how it is made, and the concept is there. So maybe you guys could explain about your pieces or something. Just to give a bit. And also to say some words about
Yeah, maybe we should also do that. Maybe we start with this. And it's also for us, I think, a little bit harder to talk about his work in his place. And also, he has been also exploring quite a bit in a sort of wide spectrum because the last few years he's been working also a lot on sort of nature-inspired pieces. And I think that's not really the case in this situation, would you agree? So that was actually before what I would explain about him, but I think now he's exploring a little bit of a different direction. And mainly he's been experimenting with how to make wood colored. And so then he found out that he could do a fade, and then I think this coloring and the fading led him to make these objects. So it started with color and fading, and then these objects came, not the other way around. So, and I think that's sort of like how far I can go. Speaking about this work,
Yeah,
what do you think about it? You have something to add?
No, I think it's one point. I think exploration on composition and color in the woods. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think other sets rules for himself. For example, in these pieces, like, okay, I can have these pieces of oak wood, I can have them in these planks. I'm going to color those planks like this. Then, with that as a sort of set of rules, you can start making propositions. And then you end up with the. So also then the process still dictates the end result a lot, which is then also the nice overall connection with all the works together.
That's what it does, because we never hardly ever make a composite or a composition, right?
Yeah.
It's actually always one material, one technique, and that has to create the
Yeah, you're
thing.
trying to sort of set this like logical rules for you.
Yeah.
Come to get your end result.
Yeah. So it's always one idea. It's not two ideas in one object, right? It's not like
Yeah.
mixed media kind of, as I would say. It's always one media in a sense. I think that connects us also in
Yeah, and it's always readable in the pieces. So
Yeah.
that's why we also don't need like to write a whole essay to explain the pieces, because I think there's not so much to talk about. There's the way it's made, and we think it's important that you can read that. So if you can explain that shortly, the goal is that people then can read it themselves by looking at the objects.
The objects.
Yeah.
That's what's
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Do you want to start?
Yeah. So yeah, as I said, also I work really from experimenting with materials, and it's started by a sort of fascination about deformation in metal. So I first started doing a lot of experiments by putting extreme pressure on the material, seeing how it deforms, how it behaves, finding details that come out of this technique, and then translating that into a functional piece. And I started doing the vase, so I did like a whole set of those different types of vases where the pressure comes from the top. There's like 65 tons of metric tons going on the tube, and then the material just starts to yield, and then these folds appear. And then, no, it's not heat, it's just pressure, just weight. And then, yeah, I just really enjoyed this normally very hard and cold material having these super soft shapes appear. And then one important thing for me in the process is that the detail also becomes functional. So what I did with the vases is that the bottom is also clamped into the folds actually. So the fold is not just an aesthetic detail, but it's also giving the tube its function as a vase. I think that's always very nice, that it's not just for aesthetics, but also for the functionality of the works. Yeah.
How did you come up with this idea? I mean, you saw something in the environment, or
No, just playing around with the machine. And, as I said, sometimes maybe stupid things with it. And, then you can, for me it's really an exercise to get the inspiration. Because I think when I start sketching, every shape has to come from your mind, sort of.
something that you've seen?
Something that you've seen, like it's all based on what kind of things you have in your drawer upstairs. When you do the experiments, it's a complete random thing that happens, which then, yeah, is a sort of trigger to give yourself inspiration. And then I did it with this. So now, by now, all the pieces that I do in my studio, I do with that machine. So we also use it to do patterns in aluminium and make like materials from that, stools. But then there's a whole series of things that are made from tubes, which are these pieces. So they are with the same machine pressed flat in two areas, and then I can put different tools on the machine to bend that area. And the shapes of the bend parts, they literally appear from those two steps. So it's the same as the vase. It's a direct result of those two sort of steps that I take with the material. And then from that, I create a sort of system to make multiple different pieces with that same technique. So we also do chairs, more complex pieces as well. And then it's a whole collection that is made with all exactly the same technique. So that's from the work here, a bit how I work.
Okay, can you tell about my work a little bit? So as I said before, that like my work constantly evolves from work I do before, and it's constantly an exploration, and I make samples and tryouts, and from these samples I did before, new work arises. So actually I had a collaboration with a fashion brand, and they invited artists to make pieces for them, so like homeware accessories kind of thing. And I was tasked with the idea of making bookends, and the quantity of bookends was quite high, and I do like this very industrial approach in design as well. And because the quantity was so high, I tried to explore like the technique of just folding metal, like with the big machines in the industry. And I basically came up with this detail, which is this one, where like two sheets which are folded, how they connect together, where you have like this slit basically. And that was like the main detail of the booklet. This connection basically comes from the same idea and just use this detail for a new connection. So these pieces are all cut and folded from aluminium, and they slide into each other for like a very simple connection. And I do like with the pieces that like all the details are just a consequence of how the machines in the industry work, and that is all there is. But for me, like, it's enough. It just shows you the beauty of like the radius of the metal when you bend it, if you deform it. Yeah, and this set is like what I came up with.
Nice.
My turn.
Yeah.
So I think this piece and those pieces on the wall, and I guess I would like to start to show everything. I'm not bound to any material specifically, but I guess I could say that everything I do in formal language is very like monumental. So all of the forms or shapes, they are very simple. And what I'm most fascinated about is the intersection of two of the same. So what you see here happening all the time. And what is the thing about a very simple form language? If you start to make it, there's also very little space for error. Because if it's very simple, you can see right away if it's like 1 millimeter off or something. So it's, I guess it's also a challenge in sort of like, if you strive for simplicity, you also in the same time need to strive for extreme perfection within how it is built in the end. In this case, way back I had an idea, I had this idea to have a distorted line on a straight background, so what it was visually. And in all honesty, I was doing it for another project, but then it didn't do good in that project, and then it lingered with me for a long time. So then I started thinking about sort of how I would want to see this in its ultimate form, and then I created this thing. So basically, just to explain a little bit, this is metal, steel, and it's black coated. And then the sheets are green on top, and they're aluminum. And then we do hand sanding it by hand, so that you see also, you know, it's not a machine, it's sort of like still a handmade kind of thing. And yeah, maybe funny thing about, or interesting thing, so these to create all of these, there's more than 400, I don't know exactly, more than 400 of these sheets on here. But none of them are the same, because we wrote the Python script. And we said, like, okay, these are the boundaries, and you can do 3 millimeters this way, 3 millimeters that way. And Python created 400 individual different drawings for me, which I can have laser cut at the factory. So yeah, all of these are different.
You mean you programmed in a way?
Yeah, it's a program. Yeah, it's a script you write, and then all of these drawings you can bring it to the factory and they can laser cut it. The robot doesn't care if it's one time different than the other time. So yeah, that was also something for me that was very interesting to explore. So, so I can actually code in to create the art a little bit, or design. So another thing I want to say is that I'm mostly inspired by things that are below the surface of what we think is beautiful. So very industrial, like air ducts, air vents. I mean, very industrial things that are never meant to be beautiful, right? So it's kind of, I think I draw a lot of inspiration from there. But for these things, I actually stumbled upon a very silly inspiration. So I was sitting in the kitchen and I saw this spaghetti scoop. You know, it's a hole and then it has these fingers. And well, this has also a hole in the fingers. And then that's how I got to it. And well, and then you think like, it's silly, but does it look good? I think so. So let's do it. So yeah, and for that I think what's really interesting is also this is collaboration with you drawing things and then sending it to the factory and they laser cut it, and then you're almost done. So I'm really eager to explore sort of all of the shapes I can make this and how I can make use of the space, right? So going into corners, going around doors or whatever. So it's now, so this is phase 1, and it will hopefully start to keep developing more and more until it's not interesting anymore. Yeah, that's great.
What else can we talk about? how much do you work how much do you do the objects yourself, and how much you send it to the factories to do it?
For these, it's like everything, like the bending around, because that's something I have to do myself, because I have tools for that we make. So this is all made in the studio, in our workshop. Just except for the coatings. Of course, the coatings are powder coatings, and they are done with the external powder coating company. But then the coatings you see here is sort of specially developed different layers on top of each other that I also experimented with together with the powder coating importing, either imports the powders. We did some experiments with like sort of mixing color into semi-transparent coatings, and that's for example the red one. So then I also try in that sort of step of the process that is not really happening in my studio to still do an experiment with that and then try to have a nice result of this sort of standard coating. Yeah, but maybe all the stuff is done.
For me, this is quite an exception because this is done quite traditionally. So the cutting and folding is done at a factory. So that's like the biggest part of this work. Then the finishing and assembling myself. I think with my other work, it's more that I do one part at a factory, but then find a way of bending metal which they cannot do in the factory, and this I do myself. So, for example, these big shells I have, they're curved shells. So then I find a way to just use ratchet straps to tension all the pieces and put everything together. So it depends on the project. I like both, that this is like quite outsourced, but also the projects where I do almost everything myself, I also really like to do the difference per project.
For me, the difference is because, so next to this work, I have the gravel work. If you ever look at the website, you'll probably see a lot of that. That's a material I developed myself, completely. So, and that's not, I cannot outsource it. I could, but then I have to tell the factory how to do it, but I don't want that. But for these pieces, this is on the list, cut and then CNC bend. What I talked about, the simplicity and the perfection you need to create like this, I could never honestly do this myself with the actual variable. If I only had their facility, yes, I could, but it's the same. So all of this is outsourced. We just assembled it and welded it together and finished it. So I could never make this with a saw and a grinder or something. It's impossible.
The assembly is a very important part.
The assembly
Also
is
for you.
Maybe a most difficult part.
That's the moment where the actual magic happens.
Yeah, I mean, to make this has been painstaking because I had to support and make molds to make sure that it's all straight. And then when you weld it, there's heat going into the material. And when you heat metal, it's going to bend it, it's going to do something. So it's a wet cloth, and then one weld here, and then you both going to be welded there. And you have to be very careful not to, so that it's going to be distorted. Because if I start here, and it's a little bit distorted here, I will find out when I'm here, after 1 week of working, that it's not straight anymore. So it's been very, I mean, it's definitely something. I would also not so quickly outsource, I think. For these, yeah, it's quite obvious. I also cannot make that myself. You have to do it better.
It's also for like some other projects I do, some like stools, benches and chairs, which are like in quantities go up quite a lot. So then it's also like, okay, some things I could do myself, but is it still, do I really want to be welding every week? Or do I want to be designing new stuff? So then I have, depending on my quantities, I have some people around me which are very good welders and they actually can do it better than me and quicker. And then I could outsource these things as well. It also depends on the piece.
Yeah, I think it's a very important part because I think we all know quite a lot of people that did self-production and then became products. If there's a product that is then being sold, it's not an addition. And then they become slave of that product. So they're actually designers, but now they're just the producer of this thing all the time. You know, and I think that's something that we, I think all of us consciously avoid happening.
That's true, that's true. And Tim mentioned that he does some interiors and also designs some jewelry. What's the could you describe the spectrum in which you work, the scale, for what kind of objects? I don't know.
I think it's
spatial.
again with this, it's again a result of the methods and the reuse of material. So what I see a lot is that there's material experimentation, for example, also with the sheet metal that I do. So I started doing stool with that, bench, but it's really about the ductility of the material, and also the shape of the stool is literally sort of dictated by the pattern that the metal has. So this, it's very, as I said, readable. So what I see that is that fashion brands or architects, they see the opportunities in that object too, because you can see also like the special part of the piece is the experiment with the material has been done, and the scale of the piece doesn't matter. So what we then did, the first thing I did was for a fashion brand from Antwerp, we did like signature pieces for their store with that material, so bigger objects like cash registers and product furniture, plus what we then the stools also in the store. But that's a bit how it works. So when I get asked to do this kind of things, it's because someone saw the smaller object or the technique and then can already think about steps that you can do with the material. We also, for example, did a collaboration with Vimora, with the suitcase brand, and they so the suitcases are made from a discorrugated aluminum, which is very similar to the technique I use, only they use it in a very classical way. So there's very little room for playing around with that. And what they did is that I had a list of all their parts, and they said, just let us know what you want, and we ship it to you, and you can start experimenting. So that's also fun thing. So that and they actually saw the technique I use to be similar to what they do, but in a different way, like in a more free way, let's say. And then also, these kind of projects come out of that principle.
But as you said, that's the way it works. Like I think it's important to, because we have some students over here from the Academy of Arts. For them to understand that you design some object that you initiated yourself, and then you get commissions regarding that object, right?
Yeah, it's definitely your business card in a lot of ways. Yeah.
It can be applied.
Yeah.
And it can be anything, right? So
It can be anything. Yeah. So that's also what you also said about the chair in the beginning, that we don't start the design process in the way that we're now going to sit down and design a chair. We look at the material and then see the possibilities. So that means also that if you go back to that first step, sort of all those possibilities are still there. So it can always change to different types of objects.
It's scalable, huh?
Scalable.
It's not an object, it's a technique. Or it's
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you make this a bit narrower and higher, it's a stool.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, since we have the same background, maybe talk about design academy. What's your opinion? First of all, what kind of treasures you took from the education?
I think it's mainly added to it, and what I also really like is that the design academy is a multidisciplinary approach. So you don't choose graphic design or product design. You choose sort of in these departments in a way of how you approach your design process. What your end product is still open. So we were in the same department, but there were people in our department that did a performance as an end work, and we made more functional objects. So that's always very open at school, which I think is pretty good. And then there's just quite a lot of pressure. Yeah, right. No, it's, when you look back, it's nice. No, but it's true. And then because you immediately come from school and if you really want to do it and you just keep that attitude going, you get stuff done. So that's really what I think.
And I think we're quite lucky in the sense that we have the Dutch Design Week in Eindhoven, so where our school is, and then we have our graduation show. And I think when I did my graduation show in 2019, we had 70,000 visitors. So when you just graduated, and like, all these people see you working there.
Yeah.
So you have quite a nice start after the school, which I think is for me been a big effect.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think the treasure or most important things about the school is the hard work through any pressure. And I'm positive about that. It was harsh at some point. Also, I had no money. I mean, it's terrible actually, but yeah. But I feel that you're sort of like you're already trained like to have a hard time and then still accelerate.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, what I like. And another thing is that the competition among the students is huge. And it's in a friendly way, right? The teachers didn't do that, the school didn't do that.
I think it's not competition, it's more like motivating each other.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think in a lot of more conventional art schools, there is an actual competition going on that in a sort of backstabbing way maybe. That's not the case.
No, like that's what I think. It's just you lift each other to a higher level, you know.
Yeah.
So I would come in the morning and I would have worked on something pretty hard, but on this thing not so hard because I had to choose. And then I go in and my friend has done something amazing. Then I'm like, fuck. You know, so you go home and you work to 4 at night because the next week you wanna be at least at his level or something, you know. So it's kind of like yeah, and for some people it was terrible. It was some people it kind of like screwed people up, but like, I guess for some part of the group worked very well.
Also, a thing that I remember from the school is that we had like one class which was about making shapes from paper. And it was, what you did was not that important, I think. It was just, you just make shapes and then it was quite hardcore because you had to do for next week, you had to do 50 more. And then, okay, if you elevate, do 50, elevate, do 50 more, and then make more. And there is this moment that you just cannot think of new shapes anymore, you just do stuff. And then you don't think about it, you just gotta make, and at the end, you're gonna evaluate what you did. And I think also for me, this is really where I started to understand what I could do and what I was doing, I think. I think it was a very important step. Yeah. At the time, it was horrible, just to make all these models. You're sick of it after 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I agree to that. That's so you would go to class in like first class and say like, next week you're going to design a chair. Next week you have 40 paper models of this field, right? That's a lot. I know you want to do all of them good, but actually by trying, you find out because you cannot have an idea. Like if I tell you chair now, you see 4 legs and 1 surface like this, 1 surface like that. But if you go on, you can find out that it can be something else also, I think. So, but if you start from an idea, they already exist. So you always lean on things that you've already seen that are already in your brain, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really the method of getting out of your brain and finding new things to do.
Thinking with your hands.
Yeah, and this with like the paper, for example, still a thing I do. So when I have a new assignment, like if I want to make a new product, I have like just a stack of A4s, just like cutting, folding, put it there. I just do stuff, but I for the do think about it, it's like more like producing a lot, see what happens, see something interesting, and then go on with this and just make more. And I think this I really learned at the academy to just push it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And make a decision, like for the next step.
So what would be your advice for the ones who are going to graduate right now? How to find the path to work hard?
Yeah, but it's difficult. I think it's very different. It's a personality thing also. Like for us, this is something that really works for us. But if you're in a different, if you want to be a video maker, this paper modeling exercises.
They're talking about designers. They're talking about designers.
Yeah, okay, but in our school they also write a bit of film. So,
I can say something about it. So when I graduated, I wanted to be a trend forecaster, wanted to be an exhibition designer, I wanted to be a furniture designer, and I wanted to be a collectible furniture designer.
You did all of it.
Yeah, and I did all of it, but then in the end nobody knows really, or you know, people want to know, they want to knock on your door and they want to know if they can get, or we need to be with this person for this, right? And I think you guys did it very differently. So decide what you want to do, and okay, keep it open enough that you can enjoy it, but try not to do everything because it's going to be hard for people to find you, who you need, right? Clients, to know what you do, right? So yeah, I guess it's better to, and you don't have to write a business plan, but it's good to think about, okay, I would love to do this for many years, and I could do it for these people. So then, you know, it's focused. And then you don't spend time on things that you really want to do and then nobody wants to have it. Right?
yeah, it's like I have like friends and they really want to be filmmakers. They're now finally doing very nice films, but to in the beginning start to make money, they started doing web design as just as a cash cow. But they were doing that for 2 years and everyone thought they were web designers. So nobody actually approached them for filmmaking. So that's what you also mean. It's important, like sort of think for yourself also what you want to do and then do that, and not the other thing that gives you the money or.
Yeah, but it's good to be advanced. Like, we're web designers, but we're gonna, with money we earn, we can face ourselves for one thing to be off, and we're gonna make.
Yeah, okay, but that's also there's a risk that then you become a slave of that principle of the web designer, because then they ended up not having time for anything else because.
Well, it's
So then,
but the plan is gonna remain.
yeah, that's right. Then also what you mentioned about the graduation show and how that sort of works, that's really good for us. I mean, I think we all already knew that we wanted to do our own studio. And then you have this graduation show, you're already showing your first objects that you made. That's a very good starting point, that you can just roll from school to your studio and start doing your work. So that's a bit how it happens, sort of. So that, but then you need to know that you want to do your studio, if you want to have your own studio. And I think if you want that, you should do it.
I also have another one, the press kit. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah.
So when you graduate, make sure that you have pictures of your work, good photos, write something about the work, and the materials and stuff, write a biography yourself, and if you can, even try to write an article about your own piece, because you put it in one file and you send it to all of those magazines. And you can even make like a quote, Tijs Gilde design stuff in metal, blah, 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 blah. You will see that magazines, they are dire for articles, but we don't have the time to do an interview with you. But you already wrote their article for you.
Yeah.
And then you will see you'll get published. And I know for me it was, especially when I graduated, I got published in the Netherlands, blah, blah, blah. Then people from Belgium, they buy the magazines from the Netherlands, and then they start publishing in Belgium. And then in France, they buy the magazines from Belgium, and then you see, you spread across the globe. And I think it's very important, the media. Use media.
But this is all initially based on knowing that you want to do your studio, and yeah, so that's, I think, very important. No.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Maybe you have questions? Certain pieces or the practice itself, or you need a advice?
Comments also on you?
Like, are you targeting like any audience when you produce the materials like the table or the chairs? Like you have like auditorium, like maybe you don't, but you know like who's gonna like.
Yeah, so I think that's also after a while you get to sort of get the hang of that a bit. So I started in the beginning making the smaller vases. That one is over there. It's like tabletop. This is a different type of buyer than the bigger pieces. So, for example, I started targeting fashion retailers. So those pieces I actually sell mostly through fashion retailers, physically in stores worldwide. But pieces like this are way bigger. This is, I would say, that more towards the collective design field. So these pieces belong in a gallery. So that's it sort of also happens a bit while you're doing it. But then you know when you're making a bigger piece, that's probably more going towards the gallery than something else. But specifically targeted in the beginning of the design process, for these work, no. So that's also again a result from the process.
I think you do what you like and you hope that somebody
Exactly. Yeah.
they find you as well.
Yeah. And there's many possibilities also. So, architects, if you understand a little bit like where your pieces could go and how and with which kind of other third parties, you can sort of sell them, like basically, and you can categorize this. You can say, I already understand that this piece I should not send it in fashion retailers because it's not going. So you learn this a bit over time.
Was there like a particular reason why you made those like 400 individual profiles? Or was it like just you wanted to see if you could write a code to produce that?
No, it's a good question. But so the idea was about the sort of visual thing that happens, right? But if I would have one in one wiggly shape and I would put the next one in the exact same shape, you would see the repetitions very much. So and then I think the whole thing, the magic of it goes lost. And also I would say that that's maybe something you're standing over here, and then you walk closer, and that's something you can discover, right? So I think it's important to create layering in sort of how you perceive an object. So yeah, I mean that's why I did it. And the program just helped me to do it because I was first drawing all of them in Illustrator, and then I thought like this should be and could be done better, I think. And then I found it.
And it's cooler also, I think.
It's cooler.
Right? It's cooler. There would be a chance that you see one of them and then you're like, this one's the same.
Yeah, it's not fun. No, it's not. It's not busted.
Yeah, then you bust it.
Yeah.
And what's the program used for like iteration of the
It's called Python script.
no, but not like these two plates, but a different like the same model for a different like iteration.
Oh, it's Rhino skills. Rhino 3D. I would not honestly advise so much to use Rhino because industrially, you're gonna have things made industrially. Rhino is not really suitable, or at least not the way I can do it. Because the guys who produce this, my files they cannot read. They need SolidWorks files, or Fusion 360 files. But I think for designing things, it's really comfortable because you can just, it doesn't have any rules. I mean, it's quite free and so yeah, I feel very comfortable designing with the program. And then there's also 40 models in the program, and 40 different models, and this is still the same process, but a bit quicker than I would make that paper.
Less fun.
My question is a little bit more general. So why do you design?
For me. For me. No, I could say I want to make the world more beautiful, and I do want to do that, but I'm not sure if I'm capable. So I guess I'm doing it for me, because I like it.
Yeah, for me,
It's
just fun. It's just really.
Yeah.
And also, I think that's also kind of a good measuring moment or tool. Like if something is not fun anymore, maybe you're not doing the right thing in your design practice also. I mean, that's what I sometimes try to ask myself, do I still like this? And then the answer is no, maybe then.
Because we don't give a solution to everything, right?
No,
We're not really. Oh, we give a solution to an interior.
yeah,
For an interior.
What to
It's
sit
not
right.
for not helping really anybody with the bigger world problems or something. I don't think that in this category of design, that's really not something you should expect.
Fun is the biggest thing. Yeah.
One more question.
Yeah.
We often hear like some successful stories and like the way how it was from the good side. But have you had some failures? Maybe like you could share some experience, or maybe like failures in the last moments or something. If not,
Many.
that's okay. Like something your favorite failure.
My favorite failure. Oh man,
It's difficult to choose.
There's nothing going wrong.
There's so many. No, there's really, I mean, terrible stuff. I've done things wrong. How do you say, in business-wise, you know, and not saying the right things to the client, or you know, and then I don't know. Then afterwards, you think like, shh, I fucked up. But also one time I had no money and I was going to Milan for my first sort of Milan show. You know, I paid a lot of money to it, but I had no money, and I was casting the seat of a chair I wanted to make in resin, and it was literally my last money, and I didn't mix it well enough or something, so it started dripping. Everything was full of plastic, and next day I had to go into the van to Milan. I mean, that was terrible planning, terrible financial planning, and then I mean that gets you gray hair when you're 20, you know, those kind of things. But I mean, it's also, I guess, it has to happen sometimes. You need to do something stupid, because then the next time you're very much aware of that something can go wrong. Yeah. Do you have any?
I think business-wise, there's a lot of things to learn the hard way, I think. Because at the academy, we're taught a lot about how to design stuff, but they don't really teach you a lot about how to run your own company. So this is like you just have to start and see what happens. And that's not always good as well, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't have a specific.
Or how to, you know, a contract. How to read a contract, how to respond on the contract.
Yeah.
I mean, you can actually say to somebody, no, I don't agree with the contract you sent me, adjust this. I didn't know that. I've been signing contracts I shouldn't sign for a long time. I didn't know that actually. Nobody told me. Right.
I think for me it's a bit about detailing and taking your time for stuff. Because I sometimes did things too quick, or then there's not enough time. Things go wrong. I had one time that we were doing pieces for a show in New York. They were zinc plated, and zinc plating went wrong 3 times. Final time we managed to do it, but I literally had to pick them up from the zinc plating company, put them in the crates, and then in the afternoon the shipment went. But then we wrapped it too quickly, and there was acid still inside the pieces, and 2 weeks later in New York I unpacked it and it was completely ruined. Yeah, that's a very difficult thing to deal with. So yeah, take your time, and if it's not finished, it's just not finished.
Yeah.
You know, it's better to do it right than have the thing ruined somewhere.
Yeah, or stay calm and fix it.
Stay calm. Yeah, that's what I mean. And then they say, sorry, it's going to be later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.